by your name? Who calls you by your name? Names are important, aren't they? We're called different things in different contexts, denoting different relationships that we have with people. I'm called Mum at home. I'm called Reverend Watts when I work in a school. I'm called Sammy most of the time at church and by most other people, and then Samantha when I'm in trouble or if I'm on the phone to the bank. I grew up in a big family, and one of the things that my dad did to mark special relationships with each one of his 5 children was to give us all nicknames. He had particular names for each one of us. Now, he died about 10 years ago, and although my siblings and my mum still use that nickname sometimes, I know that I'm never again going to pick up the phone and hear my dad's voice calling me by that name. Let's bear that in mind. It's been another week of lockdown, and in some ways things seem to be kind of quite similar. But we started the week with the Queen's broadcast, inspirational, calm, reminding us of all that she's seen during her long reign, going all the way back to the Second World War. We've seen our Prime Minister hospitalised, and we continue to pray for his recovery. We've seen stats and charts. We've heard stories of those ill, those dying. Tragedy has perhaps come right into our lives as a consequence of that. For others, there's been hope, there's been jubilation, stories of recovery. We've applauded and continue to applaud our amazing key workers. We've probably attended various Zoom meetings, connected with people online, and we've maybe watched a lot of Netflix, a lot of videos, done a bit of gardening, done a bit of exercise. But today is Easter Sunday. Today is the centre and heart of the Christian faith, and so we give our attention to this reading now from John's Gospel, and I want to try and pull 3 things out of it. Firstly, that the resurrection of Jesus Christ is extraordinary. Extraordinary, out of the ordinary. It is implausible, impossible, incredible. People don't rise from the dead. I have these conversations when I'm at work, in school. People say to me, how can you believe that? How can you believe that that is true? Because people don't rise from the dead. But that surely is the definition of a miracle. It is the intervention of God in a way that is beyond the realms of daily life, beyond what is normal and expected, beyond scientific explanation. That is the point. It is miraculous. It is extraordinary. If people rose from the dead every day, if it was a regular scientific event, if it could be documented by the medics as something day to day, well, it wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't be extraordinary. Now, it's not that in the past they didn't understand death. It's not that 2,000 years ago they didn't have the same science as us. They didn't. But they knew that dead people stayed dead. They weren't stupid. To rise from the dead was and is miraculous, unique, unexpected, extraordinary. The Romans, who took charge of Jesus' crucifixion, were phenomenally good at killing people. It's what their reputation and the might of their empire was built upon. No one ever just got through crucifixion. No one ever survived. Jesus couldn't have fainted or faked his death. All 4 gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, are at great pains to let us know that Jesus was really dead and his dead body was really placed in an impregnable tomb. John, whose gospel we're reading from today, actually includes the detail of the spear being put into the dead Jesus' side and out flows blood and water, a medical phenomenon called pericardial effusion. It only happens after a person has died. So for those first disciples, for Mary Magdalene in the garden on that first Easter Sunday, the idea of Jesus rising again was extraordinary. And the details that John includes, the empty tomb, The stone rolled away, the grave clothes folded, but folded as if around a corpse, only the corpse isn't there. All of this is extraordinary, so much so that Mary says, where's the body gone? Who's taken it? She thinks it's been taken, perhaps by grave robbers. But think, Mary, grave robbers would not take a body and leave the valuable spices and the valuable linen. That doesn't make any sense. Or perhaps she thinks it's been taken by the authorities. But again, not logical. Because actually, if that body had been taken by the authorities, as soon as Jesus' followers started to say that he'd risen again, they would have produced the body. The Romans would have hung his dead body on the city gates to proclaim this is what happens if you challenge the might of Rome. No, the body was gone. Extraordinary. The resurrection of Jesus is extraordinary. But it is also transformational. I read the Gospels and I cannot but be struck by the transformation in Jesus' followers. A few days earlier on Good Friday, when that awful day of Jesus' death ends, the disciples have scattered. They've abandoned and betrayed their Lord. Only one of them was present at the crucifixion. The women who were there are desolate with grief, and all of his followers were terrified. They are in hiding, desperate not to be caught, desperate not to be the next to be crucified. And yet from this moment on, just a few days later, they are out there telling one another and then telling the world what has happened. No longer grieving but excited, no longer scared but bold. They are brave and full of joy. They are so convinced that they are willing to give their own lives for the truth of this extraordinary, incredible event. So willing to give their own lives that we cannot think that they would have faked the disappearance of the body. And millions have followed that path, so convinced and transformed are they by the truth and power of the resurrected Jesus. And here in this reading that we look at this morning, we see the transformation in Mary. Mary Magdalene, one of Jesus's closest followers, she had him to thank for her life, her health, her deliverance, her sanity. And so she comes in chapter 20 to the tomb early on the morning when it was still dark. Way back 7 chapters earlier, John has included in his gospel this little phrase, and it was night, when Judas goes to betray Jesus. And we have this feeling that it has been dark now right through those 3 days. And Mary comes expecting Jesus to be dead, expecting to visit the tomb of a friend for whom she is in the deepest grief. And then she realises that something has happened. The grave's been tampered with. The stone has been rolled away. She runs, she finds other people, she brings them, they look, they go in, they encounter angelic people. She doesn't know what's going on. She then comes back. She is overcome with emotion. She's weeping so much she can't see properly. She encounters angels and she doesn't even seem to register that. She sounds like a scratch record. Where have they laid him? She asks it 3 times, verse 2, verse 13, verse 15. Where is the body? And then at the end of the reading, total and utter transformation, calm, confident, assured. Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord. Transformed, utterly transformed. What she experienced in that garden that first Easter Sunday changed her totally and forever. And as the Easter story unfolds, we see transformation after transformation. We see lives changed, and we continue to see that. And of course we do, because if death has been defeated, if evil doesn't have the last word, but good triumphs, if the power of sin is broken, if this damaged world can be mended, then that is totally transforming, isn't it? It's as if we've gone from black and white to colour, like that moment in the film The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy finds herself in Oz and everything is in Technicolor. The power of the resurrection is extraordinary, it is transforming, and finally, it is personal. I know I will never again pick up the phone and hear my dad saying my name. And Mary went to the garden that morning with that expectation that she would never hear Jesus say her name again. But it's in that moment, even though she thinks he's the gardener, even though she's not looking at him properly, even though she can't see him properly because she's crying and she keeps turning back to the empty tomb and she doesn't understand, she just has to hear him say her name, Mary. And it all makes sense. And her heart is filled with joy. She encounters the risen Jesus. She grasps the truth in her heart. She knows what is going on. She embraces Jesus. She wants to cling on to him, so much so that he has to tell her to let go, because actually what she needs to do is go out and embrace the world around her and tell people what has happened. Love can grasp the truth when intellect is left uncertain, writes William Barclay. Love can grasp the truth when intellect is left uncertain. The resurrection is personal. No wonder Mary then had courage. She'd heard Jesus say her name. No wonder she was the first witness to the resurrection. No wonder she was even the first apostle sent to tell that truth, to proclaim it, even in a culture that said that she should not be taken seriously as a woman and she could not testify as one person in a court of law, one woman in a court of law. And yet she goes out confident, transformed, because it's personal. Jesus has called her by her name. So for you this Easter Sunday, do you want to explore more of this extraordinary truth? If you do, I urge you, read a gospel, find a Christian, sign up for an Alpha course. There are ways that you can explore this extraordinary claim, and I don't ask you to do that lightly. Is it transformational? Do you long for your life to be transformed, to know that peace, that joy, that courage that we see in Mary? And finally, is it personal? Do you know that Jesus wants to call you too by your name?